Greg, you have a question. What do you got?
Yes, z- I'm looking to, at a previous job that I was at, we had in Salesforce like an iframe where we could log into another system without having to exit Salesforce or start another app. And my research is pointed towards Canvas apps. I have no experience with that, but I'm looking for just a direction of how to. It would do. You'd log in through SSO, I believe, and so you'd log into a whole different app and be able to function that app inside of Salesforce.
Before I fumble my way through this one, anybody have any experience with that I want to
Yes,
share?
we did that. We created a web tab, I believe. That's the term that's come into mind. It's really long time ago, so I can help you fumble through it, Bill, if you want to. But we just created a new tab, and web tab is the thing, and it loaded that other software system right inside Salesforce. So you still had all your Salesforce navigation, and if the user matched the user in Salesforce, then it single signed them in. There was a little security hole in that because there was some kind of identifier in the URL, and all you had to do is change it to log in as a different user, but that's depending on your situation.
A little security issue with that. I don't know about that. Um, yeah, yeah. So let's actually jump into that real quick. I'm going to share my screen. Let's take a look at
Excellent.
that
Thank you.
piece, and then we'll talk about Salesforce identity and things like that next here. So let me share my screen. So let's say that we go to setup, gear icon, go to setup, type in tabs here. If you had a custom object you've created, or visual force page, or different lighting components and things, you can create tabs for them. But you also have this option here for web tabs. So in theory, I should be able to click new, and it'll ask me, do I want to do full width or Salesforce.com sidebar? I thought that was like a classic thing. Let's just go with full width. Um, Click next, and then let's do tab label of, what do we want to go to today? Let's just say Google tab, whatever. Tab style, you just randomly click, or otherwise we'll be here for 10 minutes for selecting the perfect one. So we got all that. And then I'm assuming that on the next screen, it's going to ask me to put in some kind of web URL. Let's see. Any second now. Let's try that again. Yeah, am I missing like a required field here or something? Okay, there we go. So, all right, so then you can put in the URL, and you can see here, this is kind of alluding to what Angie had mentioned. You could do like merge fields and things. So if you wanted to pass in like the username or user ID or something like that, you could. Or if you just want it to be a static web address, you could put in something like that, like google.com. And let's see, so we can apply this to everybody, and we'll probably give it to all apps. That way we don't have to fight for it. Save. And there you go. So there's our web tab. Now, in theory, we could do this from setup, but let me just go to the standard Salesforce UI. But from here, there is under the app launcher, or through the tabs if you've added it to this app, you'll see that tab I just added there. And if I go there, we now have a tab with a thing that says that Firefox is not going to allow this. All right, so and then there might be some limitations with embedded URLs in tabs these days. So I don't know if that's a 100% solution. But there might be some browser settings to get around that. And if it's like an organization website, I'm sure that there's like some policy settings that they could push to all devices that would allow certain things within the browser. But that is one thing that you can look at, is creating a web tab.
I
Now,
think there was some cross object uh, settings that you have to look at.
Yep,
yeah,
cookies.
yeah.
Yeah, the
Now the
cookies are
other,
there. And the problem with Firefox, if you're using that, is that Firefox, it's an all or nothing thing. You can't identify which ones you want. It's basically you let down your guard, and any kind of third party cookie can be added to your system, and opens you up to some security issues, or it's all blocked. But with Google, I know with Chrome, you can go in and say, for this site, um, allow the cross-site cookies and stuff, and it works fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
Now, the other thing that I think you should look at, and I am not an expert on this whatsoever, but I do want to share my screen. I'll just show you this real quick. If you go into setup and you type in identity, that'll bring up identity providers, identity connect. So when we talk about like SSO and like, configuring that kind of pass-through authentication and things through Salesforce, there's definitely a lot to work with here. Again, unfortunately, I'm just not an expert in this. Anybody familiar with that piece of Salesforce, that identity functionality? Yeah, again, most of the companies I work with are, smaller companies, and yeah, I kind of see that identity piece as more of like an enterprise type feature. So I don't really have a lot of experience with it. I'm just curious, what is the app that you were looking to integrate, Greg?
Well, it's an in-house app, but it's hosted on a remote system, and the end users have to keep jumping back and forth between one system and another. And uh, when I used to work at the bank, we had because the data was so huge, uh, we gave them inquiry screens so they could look up customer information and not have to pull it all into Salesforce.
Yeah.
And
Um, Now, so identity is something to look at when we're talking about the authentication piece. The other thing, and again, a piece of functionality that I'm aware of, but I've never worked with directly, is something called external objects. Are you familiar with that?
no,
Yeah. So the theory there is that you can connect to an external system, connect to its database so that all the data resides in that external database, but it appears in Salesforce as like just another object that you can search and you can see as related list and things like that. So that might be something to explore as well. And
external
again,
objects. Okay, I've not heard of that.
yeah, and
Thank you.
here again, not this doesn't help at all, but if you just go into setup and you do external, I think is what it is here, um, and wait for my lame laptop to catch up. Here we go. So if you go to external and then under integrations, you'll see that external services, external objects, and external data sources. So I think you have to set up the external data source first and then the objects. I'm not sure, again, the exact setup, but that might be something to explore. And I'm sure there's some Trailhead modules that'll walk through that as well.
Well, thank you for the help because I was hitting everything wanted to go through Heroku on Trailhead. Yeah, there's nothing free anymore on Heroku, so you have to sign up for a monthly
Yeah,
fee. And um, so thank you,
yeah.
Angie.
They got rid of their free like terabyte or whatever.
No, they got rid of everything free. And I was actually thinking, why would they get rid of all this free stuff? I mean, and then I realized that I had like 400 free apps that I started and just had running with their free, you know, whatever it's called. What
So
do
it's
they
your
call those
fault.
things? It could be,
Trial.
yeah.
Okay.
No, they had what do you call that thing? It's like a worker process or something like that. I had like my own custom workbench, for Salesforce thing set up and everything else. But yeah, I think they got rid of the free, but I think you can if you wanted to set up like a small app on Heroku, you can, and you can still get charged based on usage. So if you're just running like a test app, I think it's still pretty reasonable. But yeah, no more free Heroku. All right, cool. Any other thoughts on anything that we just went through? Otherwise, we'll open it back up to questions. All right. Any other topics or questions that anybody wanted to go through for
Does
today?
anybody know how to mass delete custom object records?
I do it through Developer Console when I
Of
have to.
course you do. Gosh, thank you.
Or the issue with Developer Console. So again, here, just for those that might not be aware, let me just share my screen. I'll show you this. So a couple ways you can do this, right? So if it was something I had to do for a one-time thing and it's not part of like an actual ongoing process, I would go into Developer Console, pick whatever object it is that you want to delete. Um, let's just say it is accounts because I know that we have accounts in here.
But that's a standard object. I can do a mass delete on a standard object from
Yeah,
settings. Do
but
you have
either
like
way, doesn't
it doesn't
doesn't matter.
matter?
No.
Okay.
So all you do is you like, ID, name, put whatever kind of criteria you want as part of your query. And when you execute that, if I wanted to delete these right here, I would just click delete row. Delete all those. The only issue with that is that while you select a bunch of them and click delete, it actually deletes them one at a time, which is kind of lame. So what you'll see is that you click delete, and then if you keep hitting the refresh icon, you'll see them come back, and then they'll get deleted like one at a time, which is super annoying. So if I had a large number of things to delete, like if I had 2,782 things to delete, usually what I would do is I would take whatever query that I have here and I would put it in Apex, anonymous Apex, and I'd run a script that way. And then you can bulk delete them that way. But now that I've gone through the kind of, I would say, bad ideas, does anybody have any other thoughts on how you would bulk delete stuff in Salesforce?
Sandy's got her hand raised.
You just
Let's try
make
something
yourself
else.
make a quick screen flow and just run it in debug mode and do your
Don't you
delete
talk
right
to
there.
me about screen
But-
flows right now, Ryan.
I helped
I'm
you yesterday.
almost
But
done
anyway,
with that one.
that's the cheater way. If you're not as comfortable with the anonymous Apex to do the same thing, just do it. Make yourself a quick screen flow that you don't actually activate or anything, and just in debug mode, run it.
I still
that
have to
that works
create.
too.
I have to create a document upload ScreenFlow and then an Aura component today, and then I'm done with that ScreenFlow, Ryan, and I'm never touching it ever again
You're making
until
Aura
sustainment.
components.
Just
I-
one.
I have to
Wow.
say,
Don't.
I'll show
all
you.
this.
Sorry.
So all this time that Megan's been joining the call, I think eventually I'm gonna have to build a compilation where like she starts out like all happy about flows. I'm learning this, I'm learning that, and then she just every meeting gets slowly more and more jaded with. So yeah, ScreenFlow could be an option. There's always also the old tried and true approach of run a report that contains all the data that you want to delete, export the report with the appropriate IDs, and then you can use like data loader or some other kind of ETL tool to run the deletes that way.
Basically, I'm doing like I have a ton of test records that I have to delete. That's all. So it's not even like thousands, it's like tens. So I can go in and manually do it. I was just looking for like a quick fix.
Yeah. Now there's like a whole bunch of different ways you might tackle this depending on the use case. If this was something that folks needed to be able, you don't want to give them permission to delete in bulk themselves, but you still wanted to kind of give them the ability to do it. One thing that I've seen a lot of folks do is you create some kind of screen flow or some kind of action that allows people to mark things for delete. So imagine a checkbox on an object called please delete me. You give them the ability to flag that in bulk, and then you have some kind of nightly process scheduled flow, something that just queries all the records with that set to true, and then it deletes them.
That's
So that could be another
interesting.
approach you could take. The nice thing about that is that you can kind of put like a delay mechanism on it, where people can flag it for delete. Somebody can review it, make sure there's nothing silly there, and then you can have it processed to delete.
Interesting. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on deleting in bulk? Julia asks, does inspector work? I've never actually done that in Salesforce Inspector. Can you bulk delete with that tool?
I don't know. There's a delete I saw. I just went in right now because I didn't want to speak off. And I think you hit data import and then there's a delete option, but you'd have to know all the IDs and then hit delete, I think. You'd have to query the IDs first, your test records, put them in and delete. I think it might work.
Something like
You
that.
try it.
Yeah, Megan, take a look at that as well, especially for test records. Again, tools like Salesforce Inspector, other kind of these, developer console or things like that. They work great for test records. Not something that kind of scales to give users the access to do that, but test records definitely. I kind of feel like if the volume is under 100 and they're test records and they're clearly visible as test records, like they have the name test in the name or something like that, developer console is easiest. I mean, you just open it up, query the records, click highlight, delete, good to go. All right, Sandy, what do you got?
So I earlier this week did the health check in an Optimizer, and one of the items that came up was that we have some attachments, and of course they recommend converting them to files and not using attachments and blah blah blah. But I can't other than finding like a way to identify them with the developer console, how are you supposed to know what attachments you have?
I am going to call him out on this call. Steve, you literally just went through this and you provided the list of attachments versus files. How did you do that?
But how do you even see them? Because I did that and I got my list, but I wanted to look at them and see what they actually were.
Yeah, I don't have a good answer for you on that one. It came up the same way. For me, it came up on the health check, um, and it's another issue because when Bill and I talked about this, I said, all right, well, we should probably get away from attachments and push it into files. And they say they're moving that direction, but they have no dates in mind. And you know how glacial Salesforce is about dates on things. So I don't know that it's a critical thing right off. I don't know a good way to tell you how to find what's out there for attachments.
Well, I mean,
Um,
all of our current thing of stuff that's classified as an attachment, they're all dated. They're all like at least 2 years old. So I know we're not actually making any new ones. But it's just like, okay, I want to actually review it before I determine if it's something we want to keep or not. And
yeah.
then of course, it looks like the only way to convert is by getting a third-party app, which I'm not always a fan of. I'm like, and I mean,
It's a
it is by
Salesforce.
Salesforce Lab. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a Salesforce Labs app, so I would give it a certain amount of credence just based on that. But of course,
So
they threaten you by saying it's not supported, but there's usually good community support out there. So
yeah. So a few things on this, right? To Steve's point, I haven't seen any kind of retirement date for attachments, right? So when I look at the several thousand Panda Docs attachment files that I have in my system, I mean, I'm not going to get really stressed out about it until I see a date that they're going to do the retirement. And the part of the reason why I think also um, why I still kind of question this. When I think of attachments, I always had this in my mind that attachments are files that you would relate to a single record in Salesforce and they're never going to change, right? So when I upload like a signed PDF or something like that, like PandaDocs, right? Uh, that's something that makes sense as an attachment. Files, on the other hand, when I think of them, I think of like versioning. They have like that library functionality where it's essentially a folder where you can control, like security and access and things like that. But again, a signed PDF that I just want to attach to an account record in Salesforce, I don't need all that, right? So until there's some kind of like legit date associated to it, I am not going to stress out about that.
Not
And
stressed. We're a little quiet on work right now. So it's like, hey, let's do some things and figure stuff
yeah,
out, clean
yeah,
things up. So it's more of and then of course it's like, okay, well, you've got this thing and you're pushing for us to do it, but then you don't really have a good way to identify stuff
yeah,
and review. Like I finally did, because when I did the developer console query and stuff and got the list, it was like, I think I grabbed like, the Salesforce ID and I opened it that way. But of course, you can't actually look at it in Salesforce. You have to actually download it to do it. And I'm like, well, I don't want to download 100 and some files. I just want to know, especially since a bunch are labeled like test. And then some say that they don't even have a parent account. And I'm like, how does this even work?
yeah. There was an app. One of our clients was looking for like a quick way just to take all their attachments and export them from Salesforce. There was an app that they used. It was a native Salesforce app. I don't think it was Salesforce Labs. It wasn't like not down them all or something like that. I forget what it's called, but basically it allowed you to download everything to like a zip file. But again, you have to download them. I don't know any other way to view it in Salesforce. Um, but yeah, that migration from attachments to files, if it becomes like a thing, I could definitely see us kind of setting up a time and going through that migration path on this call. I think that could be useful.
Yeah. My guess is that since all of that stuff is 2+ years old, that we might not even really care if it gets migrated. So
Yeah.
You can use
Um,
data loader IO to download all of them to a zip file as well and look at them that way.
Amber, let me ask you a question. I haven't used data loader.io in a while. What is any idea what the current limitations of that are? Like that's a paid app up to like it's free up to a certain limit, right?
Yeah, I believe it's 1,000 lines
Okay.
a day. I think it's a day.
Oh, a day. Okay, that's more palatable. Okay.
I believe. I don't use it a lot though either, but I actually just went through the whole attachment issue like a few days ago, so it's weird that it popped up. But
So what did you use to grab it? Because I know that you can't in Salesforce look at the object itself.
yeah, ours was a little bit of a different case. We're doing an object itself and they build it into a PDF through a Visual Force page. So they just created all those, dumped them onto a dummy account, and then exported all of them with a certain title. So it limited that way.
Now, Sandy, you can query the attachment object, but you can't view the data from in there. Okay,
Mm-mm.
got it. All right.
At least I wasn't able to. That doesn't mean you can't. I just didn't figure out how to do it.
Yeah. I'm sure there's like a PDF Visual Force kind of workaround thing that you could probably do with this, but it might be easier just to download the whole thing. And
Not me. I can't do that.
all right. Any other thoughts on attachments versus files before we move on?
Yeah, just in case anybody cares, I'll give you what I used to query them if anybody else wants it.
All right. All right, Kip, do you have a question?
Yeah, good morning.
Right.
So this is kind of a hard one to explain, maybe. We integrate through Boomi to a time and billing app called Star. And they use for our offices, we have 35 offices around the country. And Star uses the API as a number. And we, in Salesforce, the office is a name. So Las Vegas would be 36. So we had to put Las Vegas for the field name, 36 for the API name. So when you try to create a field and you do a lookup to another field or another object, it comes up as the number instead of the name.
Yeah.
Because it uses the API. And so I had to create a formula. It was a case formula, and to change it from the API to the field name, which was kind of a pain because there's 35 lines of that, just the office numbers and office names. So I was kind of asking, does anybody know a better way to place the field name instead of the API when you're doing that?
Yeah, let's if you don't mind, I'm just gonna say that back to you to make sure I fully understand this. So that the office name and the office number, is that on a specific object or something? What is that? Where do you say that was a field?
We created a job object
Job object.
That's what has to be that connects to the Star platform.
Okay, so you have a job object, and now you mentioned cases. So I'm assuming like when you create a case, you're like doing a lookup to that job object so it could be marked on the case.
No, it's not cases. I use the case word at the beginning of the formula instead of text.
Okay. Okay. So where in Salesforce are you looking up to that object?
The contract object is we changed the name of that to engagements because we do engagement letters. And it's looking up to that job object.
Okay. So from there, you want it to be plain text enough where you can see that it's like the Atlanta office, not that it's like 47 or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. But
So
the integration, they're
Yeah.
coming through, they're doing that based on the number. They don't know the name. It's just the number that they're passing it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So the formula works, and when you look up the field, in the object, it says what the name is. So the formula that I built worked, but it's not really scalable that way. So I was wondering if there's a better way to do that. I could probably create some kind of a flow to do the same thing.
Yeah. So okay. Now the formula that you're talking about, what object does that formula live on? That's on the contract?
It lives on the contract object. Yeah.
Okay. So all right. Now I think I got it. So
I can show you the formula.
yeah. So when you look up to the job object, it's selecting by number still. but then you want it to be displayed on the contract as the name. And that's where you created the formula field so you can see it there.
Exactly.
So if
So
it's
that's the formula I created.
okay, now if you're already navigating through that relationship, hold on, this is on the engagement / contract object.
Right.
Is there any reason why you can't just do actually, can you show me the job object by chance?
Sure.
I mean, the job object has a label on there, like a label field, right? So that's got a, is there like a, is there like an office lookup it's doing here?
Yeah, job
So
office is right here.
job office. Okay, so that's a text field. Job ID, job office.
So everything had to be converted from that API name to the number, or from the number to the name.
Okay, so what I was initially thinking was that you had an object in Salesforce that was called like office that had like the number and the name stored on it. So it's just a table with just the names and numbers. And then on your job here, you're looking up to that office. So instead of Las Vegas being just a like a static text field or a formula field, it's actually a lookup relationship that you have there. And then anywhere that you would need to reference it, you can actually just traverse the relationship. So if you have the number, you can kind of look up to the table and just grab the
Oh,
text
okay.
related to it.
Okay.
But let me take a step back. Anybody else have any thoughts there on Kip is doing here?
I do like that solution though.
Ryan, are you talking to us or somebody else? I'm sorry.
I guess I didn't unmute when I thought I did.
Yeah,
I was saying, I'd like to see that formula again, or maybe see the list of fields on that job record, because I feel like I'm missing something here. It looked like when we saw the formula earlier, you were going to the field you just showed us called job office, and it was bringing you back a number.
It's working properly. I just wanted to know if there was a better way to create that, because that's going to be happening a lot more as I build out this org, and I'm going to just have to recreate that formula every time that I do that or reuse that formula. So if I could do a flow that might be easier, or I like the job object or the office object idea as well.
I
What if you
usually
had?
create, oh, sorry. I
Yeah,
usually
Greg.
create a custom metadata, and there I will put my key and then the description. So I'll do a lookup in the custom metadata with the key and then with a get, and then it would return the description.
So I was kind of heading down a similar path, but instead of the custom metadata, I was thinking if you had that like office object that contained the ID and the name on any object where you have the ID and you need to get the name, could you perhaps do something like a before record triggered flow so that anytime a record is saved with a number, it just does a quick lookup to that table, grabs the appropriate name and drops it in there. And that way, from a scalability perspective, you have that automation in place, it stays there. And then whenever any kind of office changes, the name of the office changes, whatever it is, it's just a matter of managing that one table. I mean, that could be a way to do it.
Do you have sandboxes that you use?
Yes.
So if you use the metadata, then when you create a sandbox, the metadata is populated with the sandbox. If you use a table, then you have to populate that table when you create the sandbox.
Greg, let me ask you a question. If you did the metadata, how would you do the lookup? Is it part of like a formula field or something?
Well, if you're going to use, like you said, a trigger or something or a flow, then you just look it up in the metadata object. You give it the API of the metadata object and the key, and then assign your description field, whatever you call it, to populate the field. In Apex, I use a get all on the metadata object, and then I put the number would be my get, and then it would return null if it wasn't there, or it would return the field that I put the name in.
Yeah.
So I could use that in a before trigger or in a flow with a fast update.
Yeah, like the before or the fast field updates. Yeah. So similar thing, just using metadata so that you have the added benefit of it being maintained between different environments like sandboxes and whatnot.
Right. And then end users, like a delegated admin or somebody could then maintain that table rather than having to update formulas.
Gotcha. Gib, any thoughts on that? You think that might be something that would work?
I'll definitely have to look into it. So it might
Yeah.
be a little bit beyond my skill level at this point, but I could definitely partner with somebody on that.
Because eventually your formula, you'll run out of space limit.
Yeah. And you have to go in and update every formula on every object every time that you add a new office too.
That's right.
Well, thank you all. Good food
Yeah.
for thought.
Yeah, I was just looking, we had talked last week about one of the functions that is only available on validation rules, which is the VLOOKUP. This is like a perfect example where like a VLOOKUP that was actually like a VLOOKUP would come in handy. Where you just have a number and it could just do a quick lookup to a table based on that number and just grab a value, but that's not a thing, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm thinking metadata type, custom object, whatever route that you decide. But I think record triggered flow would work, or that lookup mechanism where you just instead of selecting a number, you're actually looking up to grab that record and pulling it down. Any other thoughts on this, or any other ideas on ways that we could address that?
Not another thought, but I would love to see what you're talking about with the metadata lookup thing, because I was lost during a lot of that. Love to see what that is. Looks like.
You're talking about the custom metadata type thing?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, Greg, do you yeah, who had mentioned that? Greg, that was you?
Yes.
Greg, is that something that you are prepared to demo, or I'm going to share my screen? I'm going to try to go through it real quick.
Um, real.
I can do it. I'm poised to click the share button.
I'm just trying to find some code that would.
All right. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm gonna try to run through this without code right now. I'm gonna try to do this through flows, and let's
Okay.
just see how far we can get here. So
I think Bill's
disclaimer.
just going off.
No, I was gonna say my disclaimer is that I've never done this. So let's just wing it here and see what we can do, right? So if we go in here, let's go to metadata type. So we have custom metadata types, which are just like kind of weird, goofy objects that exist like as metadata versus like data. So let's just call this office location, and then office locations. Yeah, whatever. Save. Okay. And I didn't check the starts with the val, so I'll probably lose sleep over that tonight, but let's just go with it. So let's go custom fields. Let's add a custom field here, which is a number. And we're going to say this is the office number. We'll just make that like a 3-digit 0 decimal places number. Probably should have put required on there, but let's just go with it again. And then we have office location, or the name of the office. Let's just do a text field. We'll call this office name 255, and that's it. All right, so that's the custom metadata type. That we just defined the object or the type itself, and now you have this option here, similar to custom settings, where you click on that manage office locations. So when you do that, again, kind of similar to creating a record. I can come in here and give it a label, and I guess let's pretend I didn't create that office name. Let's just go with the label as the office name for now. All right, so we'll call this Dallas, which is going to be number 1. And then we'll do save a new, and we'll do. Oh man, I'll be here all day trying to come up with label names. New York, and it's 2, and then I'll do one last one, and then we'll actually get into the flow. All right, and then we'll do Miami. I did the song "Going to Miami." Is that a Will Smith thing? I'm gonna have that in my head all day. In any case, now let's just say, let's go to our object manager again, if my browser will cooperate. And let's just say that on our account object, we're going to create a field that's going to represent our office location number. So 1, 2, or 3. All right, so it'll be a number. Do this as office location number. So 3 by 0. Okay, and next, and save a new. Okay, now we have a number, and now what we're trying to do is like populate the name. And that's what we're going to do in the flow. All right, so we're going to have a text field that if they put in the office location number, we want to look up to that custom metadata type, grab the name, and then drop it in this field. So we'll call this like office location name, whatever, 255. All right, so what? Are you kidding me? Oh, did I put the same thing in there? Name. There we go. Okay, so now we have those two fields. So I'm going to save this. Now, we just created the field, so we know that none of our accounts have office numbers in there. So that's fine, because that's actually what we want to test. So what I would do then is, let's go to flow. And I'm going to create a quick record triggered flow on the account object that when it's changed or when that office number is populated, we want to look up and grab the name and then drop it in that text field. All right, so record triggered flow. And we'll do, what in the world is this nonsense? Okay, so the object, this is going to be on the account object. So whenever an account is created or updated, and we're going to go super simple here. I'm not even going to put conditions in here except to say that the value is populated. Now, clearly you might want to put some like is changed and all that stuff in there, but again, just for simplicity, if the office location number is null, false. So if it's not null, then we want it to go through this logic. All right, and we're going to do fast field updates in this case. All right, so counts changed. Now we want to look up to find the appropriate thing. And this is the part where I have no idea if it's going to work because, like I said, I haven't done this before. But if we do get records, in theory, I should be able to get office name, and I should be able to find office location here. Now you notice this is the main key difference here. When you have a custom object that's got that _ C as its API name, this has _ MDT, which is metadata type. So I'm going to select that, and we want to find all office locations where the office number is equal to the account's office number. And to get to the account, because this is an account-based record triggered flow, we're going to use that special record variable that we have. And then in theory, somewhere in here, I should have office location number. So go to all office locations where the number is equal to the office location number. We only want to grab the first record. And then the next step, I'm going to say, we'll add a decision. We'll say, did we find an office? And we'll say, yes, we did. And then I always change the default outcome to no, we didn't, or something like that. And then we know that we found one by saying the office location from get, and then don't get tricked. You don't have to select the field. So office location from get office location is null, false. Okay, so it is not null. And then, even though you got this thing, they're both going to end right now. What I always do here, I always like to have them separated. So I'll add an end there. And then if we did find the location, that's where we're going to do, we're going to update that triggering record, which is the account that changed. And we changed the office number. So we're going to say update the account. And it's the one that triggered the flow. And we're going to set the office location name equal to the name of the thing that we found. So it's this office location from get office name. No, we decided we're not using the office name. It is the office.label. That's what we did. Okay, now I'm going to click save, and this is office location lookup thing, whatever. Save, and we'll activate this. And hopefully it doesn't break because we don't have a lot of time to fix it. So if we go back to here and I go to accounts, I guess is not on this app. So let's go to the account object. In theory, on our account object, we should have that account office location number on our details page here because I added it to the layout. And if we select for the number 2, in theory, that should come back with an office location name. And there you go, New York. So, and then if I were to change this to number 1, it should grab whatever I selected as number 1, Dallas. There you go. So again, benefit of that is you can still work with just the number, and then whenever that number changes, we can go to look up on that custom metadata type and grab the office location name. And as was mentioned earlier, the benefit of doing this with that custom metadata type is it is treated like metadata. So you create your sandbox, or even if you wanted to create a package and migrate it from one place to another, it is treated like metadata, so you can always grab that stuff. So,
love that solution. Thank you.
Yeah,
Great solution there, Bill.
Yeah.
I posted my code snippet for looking it up in Apex. If anybody's in, I put it in the chat.
Yeah, I'll definitely take a look at that. With just a minute left, I'm not even going to look at it now because I'll get distracted and then I'll go into my next meeting. But what I'm going to say is, in theory, just like we did in Flow, where you can do all the same gets and you can do the same things there. In theory, in Apex, it should just be, I guess you don't do a query. I guess you'd have to do like some kind of weird lookup, similar to custom settings or something. Let me look at the code. Hold on.
Yeah, look at the code. Salesforce has a way to do a lookup of all the values for certain metadata type, and then you can use a get command to find the one.
Coverage get, okay. So it is very similar then to, kind of similar to like the custom settings where it's got like a special get that doesn't, I'm assuming it doesn't go towards like your query limits and things like that. That's pretty slick.
I haven't noticed it, so.
Yeah. All right. Any final questions on that or anything else in the final minute that we have here?
Nope, I gotta go. Thanks, guys.
All right.
Hey,
Thanks
Stacy,
all. Have
were
a great
you a
week.
Pathfinder?
So
Sandy, was that a question? I'm sorry.
Yes, Stacy. She's
Hmm.
Stacy Irwin. Was she a Pathfinder? Because I know she gave that link for some resources.
Yes, I'm here. I did post that link.
Were you an actual Pathfinder yourself?
You know, I just discovered it yesterday, and it took me to kind of this sorter interface, user interface, where you could kind of say, oh, I want to have 4 to 6 months or 1 to 4 months type of learning path. And then you could also identify which career path you wanted, like admin, architect, developer, and it would actually display different different options for somebody just coming into the ecosystem. So I'm not familiar with what Pathfinder used to be, but I had heard it recommended by somebody in a different group. And when I looked it up, that's what I found.
Yeah, I went through the program, so that was why I was kind of curious. So, and I actually am wearing my sweatshirt today.
And this has nothing to do with jumping in airplanes with IR strobes, right? Completely different. Okay.
Not this time.
Got it. All right, cool. Well, I hope you all have a great weekend.